25-0. Should The Undertaker have gone 25-0 at WrestleMania? This is Jack O'Hara Wrestling. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Jack O'Hara TV. Today, we're talking about who should have ended The Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak. Now, we've had this conversation before. Many of us wrestling content creators have had this conversation before of, Brock Lesnar being the incorrect man to end The Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans. Was he the right guy? Maybe. Was he not the right guy? A lot would argue that it should have gone to someone like a Roman Reigns, like a Drew McIntyre, one of their more up-and-coming stars that probably could have needed it more. Or maybe the streak doesn't end altogether. Maybe The Undertaker goes 25-0 at WrestleMania, a quarter of a century of dominance at the grandest stage of them all for Mark Calloway. Him and his wife on The Undertaker's podcast had the conversation that maybe The Undertaker could have gone 25-0. He said it wasn't his decision. Maybe it was his decision, but what are you going to do when your boss tells you this is what's going down tonight? Brock was a world beater already. I don't know if Brock necessarily needed it, but Brock Lesnar was the one in 21-1, as Paul Heyman always alluded to at the time 10 years ago. 3 F5s took care of The Undertaker in New Orleans at the Superdome, and we've been debating it ever since. So let's actually go down the ringer. I don't want to, get into the early matches, the King Kong Bundys and the Giant Gonzaleses, because those matches weren't necessarily, with the streak on the line. That was WrestleMania 8 and 9 and 10. The Undertaker, I don't think that the streak necessarily was a thing until WrestleMania 17 against Triple H. So this is the American Badass taking on the Game at WrestleMania 17. Great back and forth match. Arguably one of the more forgettable Triple H versus Undertaker WrestleMania matches. There were 3 of them, and we'll get back into them, but this was a solid back-and-forth clash between the American Badass Undertaker and Triple H, Undertaker picking up the win. You move on to WrestleMania 18 against the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, taking on the Undertaker. He had the slap after slap after slap to the chest. Undertaker says, I'm only going to allow you 3, and he did way more. Undertaker picks up the win in this one at WrestleMania 18, and his one and only WrestleMania match against the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And it was a no disqualification match as well. Then you had, in what I would consider one of the more, if not the most forgettable, Undertaker WrestleMania streak match, and that was the handicap match at WrestleMania 19 against the Big Show and A-Train. A-Train obviously being Lord Tensai years later, which another forgettable character in WWE. One of the more loyal WWE backstage producers as well. But that match, to me, I don't even want to talk about it. I'll be honest, I haven't even watched it. Big Show and A-Train falling defeat to The Undertaker at WrestleMania 19. WrestleMania 20, you had the rematch with Kane, his brother. That was in 2004. One of the more memorable WrestleManias of all time. You had John Cena win his first singles title at WrestleMania 20 against the Big Show for the U.S. title. You obviously had the main event that they don't promote with Chris Benoit, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. You had Eddie Guerrero winning the WWE Championship. But then you also had The Undertaker defeating his brother Kane in the in their second WrestleMania match at WrestleMania 20. You move on to WrestleMania 21. You have, I don't know if they were calling him the Legend Killer at the time, but Randy Orton with the chokeslam turned into the RKO, which was one of, at the time, Randy Orton's best RKOs ever. He takes the fall, though, in that great build-up to WrestleMania 21. That was kind of the reintroduction of the Dead Man at that time. Mark Henry in the casket match, I think it was 2006, WrestleMania 22. Probably at the time, again, someone that could feasibly defeat the streak. Mark Henry, the world's strongest man, gets thrown into the casket via a chokeslam. Closes the door on the casket. He picks up another win. WrestleMania 23, the Animal Batista. Now, this is where it gets interesting because now you get into the line and the string of WWE superstars that take on the streak that could have very feasibly ended the streak, and it would have made sense. The Animal Batista was on an uproar, no pun intended, in the WWE world. He had just broken off from Evolution. He had become a world champion. Dave Batista was well on his way to becoming one of the faces of the WWE back in 2007. This is a match for the World Heavyweight Championship that could have very easily went Batista's way if they wanted to go there. I mean, at the time, breaking the streak was kind of sacred, and I think fans would have been pissed off whoever ended the streak. They just wanted to see a really good match back and forth. And they went with The Undertaker. The Undertaker slays the animal at WrestleMania 23, and the streak remains intact at 14-0 at the time. Then you go to WrestleMania 24. Now, this is the one where he was pitched to lose by Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon went to Edge, and I believe he told Edge, "You're ending the streak tonight." He's going to end the streak. He's going to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. And Adam Copeland, a young Adam Copeland, who had just burst on the scene about, a few years earlier there into his singles run and his World Championship run, was a Hall of Famer with Christian in his own right as a tag team wrestler in World Wrestling Entertainment. Now he's coming into his own as a vicious heel, as a single superstar, as a World Heavyweight Champion. Gets the opportunity to end the streak in Orlando, Florida, in the main event of WrestleMania 24. And you know what Adam Copeland says? Thanks, Vince, but no thanks, Vince. He opts not to end the streak out of respect for The Undertaker. They end up booking the match in a great back and forth that saw the legendary Charles Robinson sprint down to the ring from about 75 yards out, if not more, that long-ass ramp at WrestleMania 24, similar to what we saw at Night of Champions this year when John Cena completely bulldozed him on his way down to the ring. And Edge ends up tapping out to Hell's Gate to end that match. Probably the closest match we have seen at that time to the streak actually coming to an end for The Undertaker, but The Undertaker goes to, I believe, 15-0 at that time before WrestleMania 25. So WrestleMania 25, or maybe he went to 16-0 that night, 17, 18. Yeah, because I think he was 18-0 during the second Michaels match. So he goes from 15-0 to 16-0. After the Edge World Heavyweight Championship match to win the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 24. WrestleMania 25. It is touted as the greatest wrestling match as we've ever seen. It was definitely the greatest match of the streak era, and that was The Undertaker versus the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. It was a semi-main event, a co-main event, meaning it was a main event match that could have gone on last, but it didn't, and quite frankly, it should have, because Randy Orton and Triple H could not outperform what they saw with The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels that night. One of the greatest back-and-forth professional wrestling matches between two bona fide Hall of Famers with Mark Calloway and Michael Hickenbottom. Yes, that is his real name, ladies and gentlemen. Shawn Michaels' real name is Michael Hickenbottom. Michael Hickenbottom. You can't even say it. That's probably why he doesn't use it. Shawn Michaels is a much better, sexier wrestling name than Michael Hickenbottom. Shawn Michaels hit multiple Sweet Chin Musics, kicked out of a tombstone, which at that time not many people had kicked out of a tombstone. And then he goes for the backflip moons off the ropes into the cameraman and takes out the cameraman entirely. And I think this was one of, if not the last match, where The Undertaker truly was like in his prime. The Undertaker beat Shawn Michaels. Many think that Shawn Michaels could have ended the streak, specifically Shawn Michaels, and that's when you have the 12-month build to Shawn Michaels. He spent the first 6 months past that not appearing on WWE TV because he lost his confidence. Then Triple H brings him back as a member of DX, and they reform DX. They take on Cody Rhodes. They take on Randy Orton. They take on Ted DiBiase. They win the WWE Tag Team Championships. And then I think around Slammy Awards time, which was TLC time, Shawn Michaels accepted the award for Best Match of the Year, which of course was him and The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. He's getting that itch again. He challenges The Undertaker to a match at WrestleMania 26. Taker says no. Shawn Michaels enters the Royal Rumble, loses the Royal Rumble. Then he tries to qualify for the Elimination Chamber, doesn't qualify. He loses the Tag Team Championships with Triple H and DX. And then he enters unwantingly, uninvitedly, enters the Elimination Chamber match to screw The Undertaker out of his World Heavyweight Championship, hits him with Sweet Chin Music. Chris Jericho takes advantage of the situation, pins The Undertaker, wins the World Heavyweight Championship, and that sets up The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels in the rematch at WrestleMania 26. The WrestleMania 25 match was so good that they're like, we have to run this back one final time, and it was perfect timing because Shawn Michaels had come to the conclusion at the time, behind the scenes, that it was time to hang it up. So the stimulation in this one, and I think this will go down as one of, if not the most prolific Undertaker streak match. It was the Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 26 in Glendale, Arizona. The streak versus Shawn Michaels' career. Once again, Shawn Michaels kicks out of multiple tombstones. Taker hit a tombstone on the floor. Shawn Michaels hit a backflip moonsault off the top rope into the announce table. He hits him with a tombstone, 1-2 kick out, and hit him with the tombstone, and that was it. 1-2-3. The career of Shawn Michaels is over after another great Undertaker streak match. The Undertaker streak goes to 18-0 after that match. And then how do you build off of those two matches that the Undertaker had with Shawn Michaels? There's no more Shawn Michaels. He's retired. WrestleMania 27, Atlanta, Georgia. You turn to Shawn Michaels' best friend and another Hall of Famer in his own right, Triple H. Triple H versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 27. I feel like gets lost in the shuffle. I mean, everybody remembers the 4 years in a row of Taker Shawn, Taker Triple H, those 4 years of back-to-back Shawn, back-to-back Triple H. That was one giant story that culminated at WrestleMania 28. But Triple H versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 27 gets lost in the sauce because WrestleMania 27 alone gets lost in the sauce. I mean, what did you have as a World Heavyweight Championship match? Edge versus Alberto Del Rio. Not memorable, and that was actually Edge's final match in WWE for 9 years. John Cena versus The Miz, where The Miz beats him after The Rock interferes. Very forgettable. Unfortunately, I know Mike Mizanin doesn't like to hear that. It's a very forgettable WrestleMania. The Undertaker versus Triple H at WrestleMania 27 was the match where you thought the streak was ending. Triple H absolutely kicked the ass of Mark Calloway in that match. Steel chair after steel chair. A spine buster into the announce table, into Michael Cole's glass box at the time because he was a heel and he didn't want to share a commentary desk with Jerry the King Lawler or Booker T. He hit him with the tombstone. Triple H hit The Undertaker with a tombstone pile driver because he hit him with like 4 pedigrees or something like that. He told him to stay down. He wouldn't stay down. Hits him with his own finishing move. Puts his arms over his chest. Does, the rolling of the eyes, the tongue, the 1-2 kick out of The Undertaker, which will go down in history as, I'll say, the second greatest kick out in streak history. I think WrestleMania 28 has the first. This was the second greatest kick out in streak history. At the time, the first, because you thought there's no way that The Undertaker survives all of this. And he did. And he ends up beating Triple H with a Hell's Gate after Triple H goes for the sledgehammer. Triple H walked away from the battle. He may have lost the battle, but Triple H won that war because The Undertaker had to be carted off in a stretcher. And he didn't think that you were going to see The Undertaker again until the night after the Royal Rumble in 2012 when Triple H was about to fire John Laurinaitis and the gong hit, and then it was on again. Triple H versus The Undertaker was set for WrestleMania 28 in Miami. It was already going to be once in a lifetime. John Cena versus The Rock. You already knew they were going to try to make it the biggest WrestleMania of all time. Triple H versus The Undertaker again, second year in a row. It needed something. It needed 2 things. First, it needed a special guest referee, and that special guest referee was none other than the Heartbreak Kid, the man that The Undertaker retired, Shawn Michaels. Triple H's best friend, so there's motive there to screw The Undertaker. It also needed the end of an era stimulation of Hell in a Cell. The Undertaker versus Triple H with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee inside Hell in a Cell at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida. Personally, in my opinion, it's the greatest wrestling match I ever watched on TV. The two that they had screwed the devil, but they got caught. That was the moment that we thought that the streak was over. There's no way he's kicking out of that. The 2 best friends finally did it. The 4-year story is finally over. They ended the streak. This is a match where I thought, this is where you end the streak, and I think people would be okay with it. This is the moment where they all walk off into the sunset together. 19-1. Shawn Michaels and Triple H did it, and they beat the streak together against The Undertaker. But no. The ends up hitting another tombstone on Triple H. Shawn Michaels counts the 1-2-3, and that was it. after a hellacious Hell in a Cell match to end an era. All three of them stand on the stage together in what is one of the more iconic pictures in the history of WWE. The three of them standing up there with the 20-0 graphic in the background. And that's, in my opinion, where it should have ended. 20-0. It's over. If you really want to go back and look at the history of WWE, sure. Did he have a great match the following year? Yeah. But that's how you end their careers. That's how you end Triple H's career. That's how you end The Undertaker's career. And that's how you end Shawn Michaels' run as well. They didn't do that. WrestleMania 29, he comes back and he faces the best in the world, CM Punk. You could have made claim for CM Punk to end the streak. As Paul Heyman has said in multiple documentaries, they were not going to give Phil Brooks that moment. Phil Brooks was kind of disgruntled at the time. That would have been his final WrestleMania until WrestleMania 40, where he made an appearance as a special guest commentator because he was injured. But this was his last WrestleMania in 11 years because he quit shortly after that. CM Punk had a special moment against The Undertaker, the Macho Man elbow drop off the top rope. The Undertaker doesn't go through the table. Punk gets hurt. Punk kicks out of a tombstone. Punk hits The Undertaker in the head with the urn, and that's when you think, oh my God, they're going to end the streak here. Because the whole build to that WrestleMania was not built off of respect, as it was the previous 4 years. It was a heel CM Punk getting into the head of The Undertaker because Paul Bearer just died. And they used the gimmick of CM Punk and Paul Heyman showing massive disrespect to The Undertaker, which didn't work. Undertaker, once again, same old story, same old song and dance. Tombstone pile driver, 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. He's 21-0. And this is where it all falls apart, ladies and gentlemen. You thought it should have ended at 24 with Edge. You thought it could have ended at WrestleMania 25 with Michaels. It could have ended at 26 with Michaels. Could have ended at 27 with Triple H. Could have ended at 28 with Triple H. 29, I wasn't convinced that Punk had a shot, but I knew it was going to be a great match. Could have Punk, if they had pulled the trigger there, could you have looked back at it 10 years later where we're sitting right now and think that was a good decision? Yeah, CM Punk's a bona fide superstar, of course. It's fucking CM Punk. But I didn't think he was going to go over, and he didn't. WrestleMania 30, The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar. This was not in 2014. Then you can make the case for putting on a hellacious kick-ass back-and-forth match between two gunslingers, and then you have Brock Lesnar end the streak. Brock Lesnar was already a world beater, and The Undertaker was no longer in his prime, and he just was not in the best in-ring shape that he possibly could be. And The Undertaker gets concussed very early in this match, and he'll be the first to tell you that he doesn't even remember the match. He was rushed to the hospital with Vince McMahon in tow in the ambulance right after this match. Brock Lesnar just hits 3 F5s, and that was it. 1, 2, 3. Nothing special. Not the super kick into the pedigree. Not an urn to the back of the head. Not a tombstone pile driver from Brock Lesnar. It was nothing special. It was just 3 F5s and a 1, 2, 3, and Brock Lesnar left the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in absolute silence. I mean, the meme lives on today of the fan in the front row with the glasses. Brock Lesnar is the one in 21-1. And yeah, did they use that to elevate Brock Lesnar? You're damn right they did. He suplexed John Cena 17 times and built Suplex City and was the world champion for about a year after that. And they didn't allow someone to pin Brock Lesnar for nearly 2.5 years following the end of the streak. And that's a whole separate podcast because the guy that ended that streak of Brock Lesnar not getting pinned shouldn't have been the guy. I mean, it had shock factor. It was one of the more shocking moments I've ever witnessed as a wrestling fan. Goldberg squashing Brock Lesnar in his first match back in 12 years. It just shouldn't have happened the way it did. Brock Lesnar ended the streak, though. I personally don't think he should have ended the streak. He ends the streak there, goes on to have obviously the elevated moment and success, but he was already a world beater. He could have done that without ending the streak, in my opinion. In my humble opinion, Brock Lesnar could have gone on to build Suplex City and gone on a terror run for 2 years without ending the streak. You go on to WrestleMania 31. This is a guy that could have ended the streak, and he would have benefited greatly from it, and that is Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt, the Eater of Worlds at the time, brings The Undertaker back. We haven't not seen or heard from The Undertaker since he lost the streak at WrestleMania 30. He summons The Undertaker back. It had a couple of cool moments. The reverse spider from Bray Wyatt and then the sit-up from The Undertaker. That's probably the most memorable picture from that WrestleMania match. Ended the same way as the previous 21 matches ended before WrestleMania 30, a tombstone pile driver and a 1-2-3. Elevated Bray Wyatt for sure, but I think a win there, putting doubt in the head of The Undertaker, losing WrestleMania 2 years in a row, I think that would have been the better call. Now, the caveat to that is that you can look back at it 8 years later, and Bray Wyatt, unfortunately, no longer with us. He would have had an 8-year run there where he could have said, I ended The Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak. I am the 1-22-1 at WrestleMania 31. And then Bray Wyatt is that next huge fictional horror character that the WWE was desperately seeking after The Undertaker. That would have made the most sense in my eyes to end the streak at the time. Considering you were already pushing Bray Wyatt to the moon. I mean, he faced John Cena at WrestleMania 30. At WrestleMania 32, the following year after The Undertaker, he had a segment with The Rock. I mean, that's how much bigger can it get in front of 100,000 people at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. Then he had a WWE Championship match against Randy Orton at WrestleMania 33. And then that's where it kind of all fell apart for Bray. He had the Firefly Funhouse match, which is just so memorable at WrestleMania 36 against John Cena. But I look back at that WrestleMania 31 and think Brock still could have been a world beater after WrestleMania 30 if Undertaker had won. And then you could pass the baton and have Undertaker lose to Bray Wyatt because Taker was not in good shape. His knees were shot. His legs were shot. Bray Wyatt could have ran away with that match and gone on to do great things after that if they booked him correctly. And again, Bray Wyatt's character is a tough character to book, and I'm not really placing blame on anybody because, you know, those fictional characters are kind of hard to book in a world of realism. WrestleMania 32. Now, this is the WrestleMania that you can look back on and they had to pivot big time because it was supposed to be the biggest WrestleMania of all time in front of 100,000 plus at Cowboy Stadium in Dallas. John Cena goes down, gets injured. Randy Orton gets injured. Seth Rollins, who was their WWE champion at the time, gets injured. So, like, 3 of your top stars that probably would have been booked in main event spots are not available. So now you have to do Triple H versus Roman Reigns, which could have been the plan anyways for that main event. To me, they could have done Roman, Seth, Dean Ambrose triple threat match with the Shield for the WWE Championship. That would have main evented the show. If Cena was not injured, I could have seen them pivoting to John Cena versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 32 instead of WrestleMania 34. I don't know what you would have done with Triple H that year. That would have been a toss-up for sure. Maybe you do Triple H versus Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 32. I don't know. But given that the circumstances of all the injuries, we'll never know. It's a what-if episode that I'll probably post here in a couple of weeks on the channel. But The Undertaker probably would have faced John Cena at WrestleMania 32, I'm assuming, if Cena wasn't hurt. And at that point in time, John Cena was kind of on the back end of his Super Cena run. And The Undertaker was still trying to build himself back up after the WrestleMania 30 loss. But they had to pivot. And they had to pivot in a big way. So Vince McMahon calls up his son, Shane O'Mac, at the time the biggest return in WWE history in 2016. They were building that Raw up to be big because there was going to be a big moment. A big moment was reported, and we're thinking CM Punk's going to return because he hadn't been back in 2 years at that point. What's going to happen? When Here Comes the Money hit, I wasn't expecting it, but I was like, holy shit, I forgot about Shane McMahon, the son of Vince McMahon, the brother of Stephanie McMahon. That was the whole authority angle. Shane McMahon comes back, wants control of the WWE. Vince says he can have it as long as he can beat one opponent on one night. And that opponent is going to be at WrestleMania, and that opponent is going to be The Undertaker. And oh, one more thing, Shane, that match is going to be inside Hell in a Cell. So it's going to be The Undertaker's second Hell in a Cell match in as many as 5 years. He had one in 2012, now he has one in 2016. The Undertaker versus Shane McMahon for control of the WWE inside Hell in a Cell. And in my opinion, looking back at that card with the stimulation that it had, control of the WWE in an era where WWE's fans were kind of stale, they were kind of sick of the authority run with Triple H and Stephanie, you book that match last. And you have fans speculate whether or not Shane McMahon could actually pull off a win against The Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell. Instead, you book it in the middle of the show. And when you book it in the middle of the show, you're thinking there's no way that the Authority loses power in the middle of the show when you have a main event match with Triple H later on in the show. It had its great moment, though, that everybody was speculating. Shane McMahon jumping off the top of Hell in a Cell, crashing into the table. I was there live. I got to witness that live. I think I still have the video on my phone. It was an incredible moment watching that in front of 100,000 people. But it ends the same way. The Undertaker, tombstone pile driver to Shane McMahon in the middle of the ring. 1, 2, 3, Shane O'Mac does not take control of the WWE. Or so we thought. The next night on Raw, Vince gave him power anyways to run Raw, and it didn't even matter. That was the era we were in at the time. Vince McMahon just made up his own rules. None of the storylines made sense. Shane McMahon was supposed to win and take control. He loses, and Vince gives him power anyway. Whatever. 2016, in my opinion, was a good year in WWE. You got John Cena and AJ Styles. You got the rise of AJ Styles in WWE. You got Dean Ambrose as a WWE champion. You got a triple threat match between The Shield. You had a lot of good moments. I mean, the gift of Jericho, man. Drink it in. Jericho, Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens, the Festival of Friendship, all of that. 2016, 2017, you gotta love it. But The Undertaker beat Shane McMahon, and that was a match that, yeah, The Undertaker should have beat Shane McMahon. WrestleMania 33, the main event of WrestleMania 33, The Undertaker versus Roman Reigns. At the time, nobody wanted Roman Reigns. I did not want Roman Reigns. The WWE Universe did not want Roman Reigns. I don't even think a lot of the high executives wanted Roman Reigns. One man wanted Roman Reigns, and that was Vince McMahon. And when you knew that this was main eventing the show, you knew that The Undertaker was going to lose. And at the time, you thought, this is how The Undertaker goes out. Great back and forth, no DQ match between The Undertaker and Roman Reigns. Undertaker was in horrible shape. This match, 7 years prior, would have been a show stealer between Roman and Taker. It ends with a spear and a 1, 2, 3, and you knew it was going to end this way. It was the passing of the baton. It's Roman Reigns' yard now. The Undertaker walks off into the sunset, and you think that's how I mean, he literally put his coat and his hat in the ring at WrestleMania. That is how you retire at WrestleMania 33 in Orlando, Florida. You finish your career, I believe at the time he was 23-2. So that would have been his 25th WrestleMania. And then they bring him back next year. I mean, at this point, The Undertaker's body's shot. Like, at that point, you end it. But who do you come back for? You come back for John Cena. John Cena versus The Undertaker is that one WrestleMania match. Well, I guess there's two, but it's two of the WrestleMania matches that you never thought that was possible. They finally pull it off. John Cena versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans. Same building where The Undertaker lost the streak. John Cena carried the whole build to WrestleMania. The Undertaker didn't make one appearance because you thought that The Undertaker was retired. You thought that was it. He put his hat and coat in the ring. Of course that was it. And that was the story. The hat and the coat were placed in the ring when John Cena was chasing The Undertaker up the ramp. Lightning strikes on the attire, the gong hits, The Undertaker's back, and squashes John Cena at WrestleMania 34. We got a John Cena versus Undertaker match at WrestleMania. It was not the John Cena and Undertaker match we wanted, though. But Taker hits him with the chokeslam, the tombstone pile driver, the 1, 2, 3, The Undertaker's back, right? So now The Undertaker's back. Now you can utilize him again, right? Wrong. When does he come back? He comes back against Triple H one final time in Melbourne, Australia at WWE Super Showdown. Not even a WrestleMania, but he puts on actually a great match with Triple H. Those two just had tremendous chemistry because The Undertaker couldn't put on a great match with Roman Reigns or John Cena, but he puts on a phenomenal match with Triple H, no DQ, at Super Showdown, which leads to arguably the worst match in the history of WWE, period, at WWE Crown Jewel, between D-Generation X, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels, who came out of retirement. And these guys are in their 50s, mind you, against The Undertaker and Kane, who are also in their 50s, mind you. And they just looked horrible. There was no in-ring chemistry. I could have been out there with the broomstick, and it would have been just as entertaining, and I would have gotten the same response from Vince McMahon backstage. And that's the fact that he yelled at them, I think, after that, and rightfully so. I mean, they made their money, but goddamn, that was a horrible match. And then WrestleMania 35 rolls around. Triple H has a WrestleMania match. Shawn Michaels is the special guest commentator for his match with Batista. But who's nowhere to be found? The Undertaker, and this is something that, to me, makes no sense at all. You retire him at WrestleMania 33, only to bring him back in a squash match against the greatest of all time in John Cena at WrestleMania 34. And now you're not even going to have him at WrestleMania 35? He's just hanging out backstage, wearing his hoodie with Vince McMahon in the production truck? Why isn't The Undertaker wrestling at WrestleMania 35 if you were going to use him in a big feud with Triple H and Shawn Michaels in the fall at just two random international shows? Granted, a lot of money was there. I get it. It's a business. It's capitalism. But why isn't The Undertaker wrestling at WrestleMania 35? There are tons of people that could have benefited and gotten that rub for a WrestleMania 35 match when you look back at it, because it wasn't The Undertaker's final WrestleMania at WrestleMania 34. He came back for WrestleMania 36, so why wasn't he on the card at WrestleMania 35? You could have done The Undertaker versus Drew McIntyre, who was primed and ready at that time. You know, maybe The Undertaker could have beaten him, and I don't think Drew should have won the match, but Drew could have had a great showing and benefited from that greatly. The Demon Finn Balor could have benefited from that greatly if they had booked the Demon Finn Balor versus The Undertaker. At the time, I don't know if the gimmick was ready at the time. I know that they didn't debut it until about 5 months after the fact at WrestleMania 35. The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. I know Bray Wyatt lost to him at WrestleMania 31, but you reintroduce him as The Fiend, and then The Fiend defeats The Undertaker and retires him at WrestleMania 35. That's how you elevate the Fiend character. You could have booked it that way. Those are the three guys I think that The Undertaker should have faced at WrestleMania 35. You had already retired Sting, so that dream match was long gone. I feel like that could have been the match at WrestleMania 32 if Sting hadn't had his neck all jacked up by Seth Rollins a couple months prior to that. Maybe you do The Undertaker and Sting at WrestleMania 32 instead of The Undertaker versus John Cena. I don't know. But WrestleMania 35, the writing was on the wall. The Undertaker should have had a match, and it should have been either against Drew McIntyre, Finn Balor, or Bray Wyatt. That's my opinion. WrestleMania 36, this is it. This is the final WrestleMania of the career of The Undertaker, the final match in his illustrious career, and it comes against AJ Styles, which is not a bad opponent at all, given AJ was a hot heel at the time and one of WWE's top superstars of that era. It was supposed to happen in front of fans in Tampa Bay. COVID hits, so you kind of have to make an adjustment. The Undertaker's final WrestleMania match just can't be at the Performance Center, no. It's got to be a gimmick match. It's got to be a cinematic match, a horror match. And that's what they do in the Boneyard match between AJ Styles and The Undertaker that main events the first ever two-night WrestleMania. Main events night one of WrestleMania 36. One of the greatest cinematic matches that the WWE has ever pulled off between The Undertaker and AJ Styles. Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, they both get involved. The Bullet Club against The Undertaker in a WWE WrestleMania main event match. Nobody ever thought they were going to see it. It was cinematic, so it wasn't live, so that they kind of got to shoot it as if it was a movie. AJ Styles smiling with The Undertaker looking over his shoulder is one of the greatest memes still today, 5 years later. Taker hits AJ Styles with the tombstone off the top of the house, buries him alive in the Boneyard match, and The Undertaker. And this was more so the American Badass Undertaker, not the dead man, but more so the American Badass, taking down AJ Styles in a good old country ass whooping I believe it was in Orlando, is where they shot it, near the Performance Center. And The Undertaker rides off with his motorcycle into the night, and that is how The Undertaker retires in the main event of WrestleMania 36. In my opinion, the best way that they could have sent him off, given the circumstances in that Boneyard match. A very, very quite great cinematic match. And then the next night, they had the Firefly Funhouse match, which was even better at WrestleMania 36, given the circumstances. But what do you guys think? Who should have ended this streak? Here's a few of my opinions of who should have ended The Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak. It shouldn't have been Brock Lesnar. It shouldn't have been Shawn Michaels. It shouldn't have been Triple H. WrestleMania 28, if you were going to pull that trigger, that's the moment where you do it. The Shawn Michaels sweet chin music into the Triple H pedigree. 1, 2, 3, streak over. The three of them right off, and they never wrestle matches ever again. That's the only way you end the streak there. Given that they didn't, the WrestleMania streak should have never died. He should have ended 27-0, I believe, was the final tally. I think he was 23-2 after Roman, 24-2, 25-2 after AJ Styles. He should have gone 27-0. He should have wrestled at WrestleMania 35, so he should have gone 28-0 at WrestleMania. Over a quarter of a century of dominance from The Undertaker. That's what I think should have happened. But if someone should have ended the streak, it should have been Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 33 and give him that rub. If the timeline was right, I wouldn't have wanted the big dog to defeat the streak. The tribal chief, Roman Reigns, defending the WWE Undisputed Universal Championship against The Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak. That is the match where you end the streak and you put the tribal chief on a whole new level of terror. And that's how you end the career of The Undertaker, if the timeline matched up perfectly. But of course, as we know, it did not. The other match that you could have done was Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 31 and send Bray Wyatt's career on a trajectory that it never quite reached with Vince McMahon's booking. So in my opinion, those are the two matches that you end the streak. WrestleMania 31, WrestleMania 33. If not, it should have never ended to begin with. The Undertaker should have ended his career 27-0. What do you guys think? Send me some hypotheticals of who could have ended the streak. To me, the tribal chief should have ended the streak if the timeline allowed it. Other than that, there wasn't much that, we could have gotten with that. But what do you guys think? Like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Jack O'Hara TV.